Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works. And we're at the clutter zone, and I've actually decluttered a few square inches here. And of course, we're working on the Dewoitine, I'm not saying that right, I'm sure of it, D520, and that's what I'm going to be calling it for the rest of this episode. It's the D520, and it's a just pre-war French fighter. And if they had a lot more of these at the beginning of the Second World War, probably could have made a difference. Unfortunately, the numbers are fairly insignificant. So, we introduced it last episode. Sorry, I still have a little bit of a frog in my throat from that cold. Because, it's a firewall from an Econoline. Alright, let's get that out of the way. So, we met the parts last time, so we don't need a reintroduction. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of parts to this kit. We have the instructions, and I believe, just to be different, this kit has you starting in the cockpit. Who would have thought? Alright, now that I've gotten organized here. And as you can see, yes, we are indeed starting with the cockpit. Big surprise there. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to do the figure yet. Figures are a pain. So, what color are we going to be painting the inside of this thing here? XF24. XF24. Well, what the hell is XF24? Oh, at least Tamiya actually tell you up here. XF24. Dark gray. Well, those buggers. Dark gray. I might end up going something a little lighter, just so we can see the detail. I don't know if I mentioned the date of this kit when we looked at it last episode, but you can see right in the sprue it says 1996 Tamiya. So this kit, we're talking about 11 years since the tooling was actually cut. So it makes it about 2 years older than my oldest daughter. And, so we shouldn't have any problems with this. I mean, everything should just basically lock together, being a probably over-engineered Tamiya kit. So I'd be surprised if I have to make a single part for this. Here's the assembled and painted cockpit interior. I took the painting suggestions from the instructions, other than using a lighter gray. I'm still going to put a wash on the various parts, just to make them come a little bit more alive and give them some more definition. Here's the cockpit sides. Once again, using a lighter gray, and the various boxes of controls picked out in silver or black. I'm going to be applying the same wash to those as well. Here's the cockpit interior after having a gray wash applied to it. It just brings out a little bit more of the detail. And here are the cockpit sides after having the wash added. Just tends to sharpen things up a bit. Looks like the fit of the wings is going to be pretty good. You can see that everything seems to agree all right. You're going to need a little bit of filler right there where some of the sprue attachments were. But it doesn't look like I'm going to be putting a bunch of clothespins on this to hold it together. You almost feel a little guilty when parts go together this well. However, there was a little bit of squeeze out of some plastic from the cement. But that's not a big deal. It's a couple quick passes with a file or sandpaper and that's done. Didn't have to do any clamping at all on this. But then it's a Tamiya kit, and that's generally what you expect. Before I assemble the fuselage, especially with the interior in it, I'm just checking the fit, just to make sure the halves want to come together without the interior in. So when I test fit it with the interior, if something doesn't want to come together, then I'll know it's because of the something to do with the interior. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to see if the wing to fuselage joint is going to be okay. And I think that's going to be pretty good too. So I'm not seeing anything that's really, really concerning yet. Once again, I haven't put any glue on. I'm just test fitting. Looks like everything is going to come together pretty good. Now, I wasn't sure if this high part here was actually supposed to sit ahead and proud, or if it was supposed to go under the turtle back, but it looks like it fits happily underneath. And as you can see, other than a little bit of springiness, there's nothing keeping this from coming together. So I think we're going to be pretty safe in moving on to the next step and putting the fuselage together. Our two halves are together. Now there's a little bit of glue squeeze out, which I really don't mind because that's really easy to scrape or sand off. I'd rather have that than a bunch of gaps that require filling. Now, one thing I did have to pay attention to, let's see if we can focus in on it. You can see the back of the support that goes up to the turtle deck here. It's centered, but when I first put it together, I didn't actually glue the interior in. I wanted to wait till I saw how things went together. It wanted to favor this side, so I scrunched that over and put a little bit of glue to run in there when I glued it together. Now, one other thing, you can see that if I can actually push the entire cockpit up so that it comes up against the underside of the top of the cowl. But when you do that, you're actually pushing it way, so I try to find a good angle here. You can see this little stop that it sits on. If you shove it all the way up, it comes away from the stop. I don't see any advantage to pushing it all the way hard up, so I'm going to leave it where it wants to sit, basically up against this stop. I'll still be able to glue it on the sides because you can see that the interior does come up against the sides. And there's nothing to gain by closing up this gap at the top. All it does is, push everything up just a smidge, and who's to say whether that's right or wrong? So I'm just going to leave it where it wants to be. Now, the instructions would have you put the exhaust stubs on at this time. They're actually going to be one of the last things that I put on, mainly because they just attach right to the outside of the fuselage. So I figured it'd be a whole lot easier to paint everything and paint and weather those and then install them as one of the last things that we do. You can see the minimal filler that was required on the leading edge of the wings. There's still just two little divots that need to be touched up, just there and there. But that's the only filler that I've used so far on this kit. Well, I spoke too soon. This is the join between the back of the wing root fairing and the rear fuselage. You can see that seam is a little conspicuous. I'm not going to be using filler on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run some white glue in there, and that way it will still be a panel line, but it'll be a whole lot less noticeable. Basically, the white glue will just kind of fill that in and make it less conspicuous. There's that panel line after I ran the white glue into it, and all you do is just basically paint a little bit of white glue on, smoosh it into the seam you've got to fill, and then you just wet your finger and just basically wipe off the excess. And if in an hour or two you look at it, you still feel it's a little too deep, you can always reapply. The air intake has been glued on at this point, and there's no seam work once again up here to worry about. This model is just clipping together basically. There's a decision to be made here in step 5, which is attaching the flaps, and basically there's some pins on the flaps, and if you're going to have them in the down position, then you leave them on and you just slide them into the wing. If you're going to have the flaps in the up position, you need to remove them. And had a little family conference with the kids, and we've decided we're going to go with the flaps down. And these are not glued in yet. They're just slid in using those pins, which gives you some idea of how well they're engineered to slide them in. So that's how it's going to be. Flaps down. I've decided that since I've got the flaps down and the plane is going to be in a somewhat dirty condition, I'm going to have the radiator exit flap in the down position as well. And unfortunately, there's some rather large ejector pin marks on the inside of it. I'm not sure how visible it'll be, but it does stick down at a fair angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file this off and clean it up before mounting it. A fringe benefit of filing the flap for the outlet in order to get rid of those ejector pin marks is I actually filed it to the point where, well, it wasn't quite paper thin, but a lot thinner than it was, because, I mean, let's face it, the metal that an aircraft is made of is actually very thin, and in scale it would be paper thin. So there we see the ejector pins have been removed, and it's a little thinner. Well, I've got the radiator assembly just sitting in place, and there's actually a very slight recess that it fits in. You see there? And my plan with this is when I go to paint the entire aircraft, I'm going to just tack it in place. And it's not going to be glued in there permanently. Then that way I can take it off, and because if we look at the inside of it here, there's some nice radiator detail here, and I think that's going to be quite visible. And if I paint it now and then glue this on, when I paint the entire aircraft, you know there's going to be so much paint get up in there that it's going to end up, ruining any effect of it being a different color. So this is just going to be tacked on temporarily while I do my painting. Now, Tamiya includes a polycap that goes behind the nose housing here to hold the propeller on. And since this is a really nice fit, I'm also going to tack this in place for painting and then pop it off. That way I can paint the propeller separately, and then I can glue this on, and I'm not going to be fouling up anything with paint or anything like that. So this has been a really quick assembly. It helps when the parts count is, I don't know what the parts count is, but very, very low. So I think this just about does it for this episode of Dan's Model Works. And it certainly has been a really easy assembly. Not like some of the other ones I've done lately. So I think the next episode we'll be getting on to painting and marking and things like that. But for now, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on modeling.